so then we're in this 90-day lull. Lutheran Social Services came in October 1st, so 90 days approximately. And then SBA closed October 15th. But at any rate, back with the homeowner, so then they go into this rebuilding. How am I going to do it? Where are the resources? Who can I call? So that, you know, the different nonprofits typically are getting calls to try and figure out, okay, who can we go to? So they're in that phase. Well, then that's when, as a region, we were able to come together and have some answers for these folks and get some case management involved. So then you're helping them through the resources. So they're still fairly energized. They're doing okay.
Okay.
One of the biggest challenges with this particular region was resiliency, or more, I shouldn't say resiliency, but more of I can fix it myself. That was a huge, huge obstacle. Amazing, yeah.
Self-sufficient.
But
ran out of duct tape.
here's what happens, yeah. So, but time either heals or brings out. And when we were in month 6 and 7, that is when our phones, just before Christmas, all of January and into February, was incredible. Folks were finally recognized to themselves, and then reached out to say, you know what, I can't do this on my own, and what is there left, and how can we help? And so that's a definite pattern. Well, then with that time frame, also we started seeing mental health issues. And so the later you get in the game, now that really becomes prevalent, particularly in the last 30 days when folks haven't even begun to clean out the basement.
In the last 30, what do you mean last?
Well, these last 30 days where we're going into homes and their basement is in the same condition as it was after the flood. Still standing water in some of them. They haven't even, they're totally stuck. There's usually other things in their personal life that complicate it. And so they finally, I'm not sure what the trigger is, somebody could probably say what it is, but they finally reach out. And so that's a whole nother phase that we're in right now. And the nice thing is, as a region, we've got really good resources. Our case managers have been trained to connect that homeowner with that. Because mental health is not our background at all, but it's that connection. So we can talk about the rebuilding process, get the mold remediation going, clean out the big, just really get back to safe, sanitary, and secure. So those are some of the fundamental steps that we're seeing, and that's why the longer we are in it, the cases get so much more complicated with what their daily challenges are.
One thing Nancy said that really struck me from all of her disaster experience is that tornadoes are traumatic, but floods are really debilitating. And the reason is especially, I see this in Duluth because we definitely have some hit or miss, in which one house could have been hit in a block and nothing else had damage. We've seen it in the whole neighborhood, but really once that initial pile of debris is removed from the front lawn, you can drive by and not know that you have a family that has suffered a significant loss. And I think, one thing that I wasn't into disasters, before, this one happened. We really saw our kind of community-based project management as a solution, and so we've been underwater with it since. But one thing that I have learned is that when we look at resources, and I had some conversations with some of the BOADs from the federal side, the Stafford Act, really has one organization that it supports, and that's the Red Cross, which is a congressionally chartered organization, and that's great. They do wonderful work in the immediate response. And unless it's a significantly large disaster in which they have, so much disaster-specific aid that they have to stick around to be involved in long-term recovery, generally the Red Cross is not involved in any of the long-term recovery. But they also have a star power, and about 70% of donations to any disaster goes actually in and through the Red Cross. And so that period of time in which you have that maximum community, we can do it spirit, the maximum, impact, helping people at the point of disaster, is what's mainly funded. And then what ends up happening is we move out of that, we start moving into this disillusionment, we start moving into what are the big resources that are needed, not for a night of housing or water, but instead for a furnace or for rebuilding or
That's
for
where you
all of
guys
that.
Really stepped in, so.
That's where we are, but there isn't the federal funding to support that activity.
And that's the part of the Medway's long-term recovery committee,
Right.
why it was natural for Greater Duluth, Medway, and Carlton County and Medway to come together to form this long-term recovery committee. The funds for it, and then